Hey, I'm Nancy Cavey, National ERISA and Individual Disability Attorney. Welcome to Winning Isn't Easy. Before we get started today, I've got to give you a legal disclaimer. This podcast isn't legal advice. The Florida Bar Association tells me that I've got to say this. Now that I've said it, nothing is ever going to prevent me from giving you an easy to understand overview of the disability insurance world, the games that disability carriers play, and what you need to know to get the disability benefits you deserve. So off we go. Today, I'm going to be talking about functional capacity evaluations and the impact the results of an FCE can have on your disability insurance claim. There are three specific topics I'm going to be talking about. First, the answers to the 8 most commonly asked questions about a disability insurance company's functional capacity evaluation test. 2, what are the 5 things that happen during a disability insurance company functional capacity evaluation? And the story of an executive sous chef with osteomyelitis who was wrongfully denied his long-term disability benefits by Hartford based on their functional capacity evaluation. Let's take a break for a moment before we get started with this week's episode.
Are you a professional with questions about your individual disability policy? You need the Disability Insurance Claim Survival Guide for Professionals. This book gives you a comprehensive understanding of your disability policy, with tips and to-dos regarding your disability application that will assist you in submitting a winning disability application. This is one you won't want to miss. For the next 24 hours, we are giving away free copies of the Disability Insurance Claim Survival Guide for Professionals. Order yours today at disabilityclaimsforprofessionals.com.
Welcome back to Winning Isn't Easy. Let me tell you the story of an executive sous chef with osteomyelitis who was wrongfully denied his long-term disability benefits by Hartford based on the results of a functional capacity evaluation. Disability carriers like Hartford are always looking for and even willing to create reasons to terminate a disability insurance claim, even if the policyholder has been on claim for many years. Now, one of the tools in the disability carrier's denial toolbox is a functional capacity evaluation. That is supposed to be an objective measure of the policyholder's level of physical functioning. Unfortunately, disability carriers will use biased physical therapists who have an incentive to skew the FCE in the disability insurance carrier's favor. The physical therapist wants more referrals and more money as a result of performing the FCEs. So they're inclined to give the disability carrier exactly what they want to keep those referrals coming in. An FCE can be cherry-picked by the disability insurance company so that they can reach a conclusion that you can engage at least in sedentary work, certainly at the any occupation stage. And the key here, obviously, is to demonstrate that you are not capable of engaging in sedentary work. So let me tell you the story of Shoup versus Hartford Life. Now, Shoup was an executive sous chef for the Hyatt. He stopped working in 2004 because of osteomyelitis. That's an infection of the spinal cord, and it's incredibly painful. Hartford accepted the claim and paid for 11 years. During those 11 years, he continued to receive treatment, including the insertion of a spinal cord stimulator and prescription pain medication that caused significant cognitive impairment. Now, Hartford didn't want to pay benefits a day longer than it had to, and certainly not until he reached age 65. So what did they do? Well, they reached into their disability insurance carrier denial toolbox and scheduled him for a functional capacity evaluation to determine whether or not he could do sedentary work. Now, the FCE provider opined that Shoup could only sit for 10 minutes at a time and was impaired by medication. Nonetheless, the FCE provider opined that Shoup could engage in sedentary work. Now, of course, the claim was denied and he appealed. He submitted reports of an IME and his own functional capacity evaluation. His own FCE provider found that he couldn't function even at a sedentary level. Now, one of the things you need to understand is that sedentary work it basically means that you have a limited sitting capability, and that you generally can't sit more than 2 to 4 hours out of an 8-hour day. So think about this. The FCE provider opined that he could only sit for 10 minutes at a time. Now, when the appeal was filed, Hartford said, well, heck no, we're not going to reverse our position. We don't want to pay benefits. And ultimately, he filed suit, and it ended up in the Fourth Circuit. Now, fortunately for him, the Fourth Circuit used what's called a de novo standard of review. The court was able to independently reach its own decision and was not bound by Hartford's claim denial. But I think that there are some important lessons to be learned from this case, because the court really talks about the two ways to attack an unfavorable functional capacity evaluation. The first is internal inconsistencies in the FCE, and two are medical histories and contemporaneous evaluations by medical providers. Let's first talk about internal inconsistencies. The court rejected Hartford's FCE on the basis that it suffered from practical and logistical inconsistencies. Now, remember, I said that the FCE results indicated he could only sit for 10 minutes at a time, and he could and needed to change positions frequently. The FCE result or conclusion that he was incapable of doing sedentary employment is inconsistent, internally inconsistent with the definition of sedentary work, because there is a limited ability to sit. The need to sit and stand in alternate positions also erodes a sedentary occupational base. Now, for your information, Social Security disability appeals can end up in federal court. And as a result, federal judges understand what the definition of sedentary employment is, certainly in the context of the Social Security case. And the Social Security standard is to use the Dictionary of Occupational Titles definition of sedentary work. So it's the recognized standard. So the court really understood this internal inconsistency in Hartford's functional capacity evaluation. But what was also crucial in this case was Shoup's contemporaneous medical history that predated the FCE. The medical records all concluded that he was incapable of full-time sedentary employment, and in fact, Hartford's doctors had concluded that until they decided to have the FCE. So the court held that Hartford's FCE was an unsupported outlier and rejected it. The Fourth Circuit reversed the denial, awarded benefits, and reinstated his benefits. And that's a phenomenal result. What should you do if the disability carrier sets you up for an FCE or denies or terminates your benefits based on an FCE? As you can see, that FCE can make or break your case. So if the carrier is sending you to an FCE, you want to make sure first they have the right to an FCE. 2, you want to get your own FCE before the carrier's FCE. 3, if you can videotape it, you want to. If not, have a representative there. And ultimately, you want to have your physician review the FCE provider and endorse your FCE, and basically have your physician reject the disability carrier's FCE. And of course, ultimately, your FCE and your physician's endorsement of your FCE needs to be sent to the disability carrier. Now, if your claim's been denied or your benefits have been terminated because of the results of an FCE, you want to hire an experienced ERISA disability attorney who can take apart that FCE and attack the underlying vocational implications that you're capable of doing your own occupation or any occupation. Don't leave this unchallenged, because if you don't appeal and if you don't get this evidence, the circuit court can tell you, too bad, so sad, we're not going to reverse this decision. I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode of Winning Isn't Easy. If you've enjoyed this episode, consider liking our page, leaving a review, or sharing it with your friends or family. Also, please subscribe to this podcast. That way you're going to be notified every time a new episode comes out. I hope you tune in for next week's insightful episode of Winning Isn't Easy.